Hello there. It's time for another Facebook Live here in the Shower Door Professionals Group. As you know, we're here every Wednesday evening, 5:30 Pacific time. So thanks for joining us. If you want to join us here in the Zoom room, you can always just click on the link in the group there. I've posted it in the description, so you can come on in and join us and hang out if you'd like. Hey, I'm really excited to have as our guest host this evening, Chance Forman. Chance is quite an incredible young guy. He is one of the founders of Glass Experts Partners. I think he's an owner at Ames Glass. I don't know if he's the owner or just one of the owners. I know that he is also involved in Brandon DeCastro's operation out there, GCS Glass. I'm going to give him a chance to tell us a little bit more about everything he's involved in and how he does it all and what he's going to do next. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Chance. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'm doing really good. You guys hear me all right?
Yes, great.
Cool. Really, I'm just like, the community is what makes me so excited. Like, it's really cool to have a bunch of cool guys from all ages and even levels inside the business coming together and getting to talk, from installers to owners and owners at different calipers. And I mean, being involved in something like this has really been super beneficial for me. I'm not a big Facebooker, so the Wednesday night calls where I actually get to talk to human beings instead of commenting on their stuff and hoping they comment back and we have a good conversation. This is more my style. I wanted to talk about like how to simplify your business and your life in order to scale it to more success. And success is defined in all kinds of different ways, as we all know. But I want to kind of go back and like maybe I could tell my story a little bit and kind of dive into why this is such an important topic to me, and hopefully throughout my story, and you guys can pick up on some little nuggets inside there, and maybe some value comes from tonight, if that sounds cool with everybody.
That sounds awesome, man. Thanks.
Hopefully I don't bore anybody, but I guess I'll take it all the way back to I'm a third generation glazer like my man Billy. We started off, I didn't want to like share my screen or anything, so I'm gonna go old school. I have this old picture right here, but that's my grandpa's shop right there. He started in Southeast Houston, Texas in 1977. And he had two younger sons who eventually split off and went and did their own thing. And his best friend, my grandpa's best friend, owned a glass company who had two sons that were the same age as my uncles. So they were best friends, and I always considered them uncles. Well, they all had dreams and aspirations of their own, and they split off back in the day and went from Houston, Austin, and Dallas and tried to like build something a little bit bigger. And they parted ways down the line. But getting back to being a third generation glazer, I grew up at the shop. Like my grandparents were my babysitters. They were my best friends. My grandpa's like, I mean, that meant everything to me. He passed away last May during all the COVID stuff. But he kind of got the whole glass thing started. So I grew up at the shop, cutting SSP, cutting mirror, polishing things. We had an old wet belt sander. We'd go stand it up against the old wet belt sander. I don't see a lot of guys using those things anymore. But I remember even cutting, like being 10 years old, and people would come up and they'd break their side view mirrors because his shop was off a main road, and they would break their side view mirrors. And they'd want them replaced, and we're like, hey, it doesn't really work the same. It's not the same type of mirror. We don't care. Just cut it and put it in there. So I'd be cutting 1/8 inch, 3/16 mirror by hand into little patterns and popping them up and, you know, putting some mirror mastic or Gunther or whatever we had at the shop back then, putting it behind there. So that was like where my glazing days kind of started. And then right out of high school, I didn't go to college. I decided that it wasn't really for me. And I went to work for my uncle who owned Ames Mirror and Glass. And that was my first job right out of high school. It didn't last real long, to be really honest. I was young and I was dumb and I was full of vinegar, and, you know, and his partner, he fired me for coming in hungover one morning. And so that was kind of it. And I started my own glass business. Well, actually I started a service company called Last Chance Services. And I used to put up ads on Craigslist, and I would hang people's flat screen TVs. And so, like, a man of many talents, that's kind of going to circle back to my point, or a man of many ambitions and shiny object syndrome, like a lot of us entrepreneurs have, right? When I saw an opportunity, I would bounce on it kind of all the time. So I had Last Chance Services. Well, my grandpa had a stroke, and I had an opportunity to take over his business. And during that time, like in the interim of that, I was about 21 at that time. But right before then, I had worked for a commercial company, and I got to see how contract glass works. So I worked for a smaller operation, but he had the contracts at multiple Bank of Americas, multiple downtown buildings, interior and exterior. And then a hurricane came through, and a lot of glass got broken, so he got to fix a lot of it. But where he really made some money was like a lot of the old school 1980s high rises down back then, where it had the pebble roofs, and all the pebbles scattered around in the hurricane and kind of scratched all the glass. So he got the contracts to replace all this glass, and insurance company inspectors were coming by, and the most minute thing they were marking, and he was getting to replace, right? So he didn't have enough manpower to do it, so he partnered with the union. And when he partnered with the union, he was able to get all the manpower he needed. And over the next 18 months, he did almost $20 million in business just replacing all this glass in downtown Houston. He had 6 buildings. And he didn't tell anyone, but he bought a new fleet of trucks, and he was the tightest old man there was. But right before the new year, he bought a new fleet of trucks, and we were like, everyone was so excited, and he bought new racks and all this stuff. And then come January, he sold the business, and he didn't tell anybody, and he sold all of his contracts, and he bought all that stuff for tax write-offs. And then he went back and he sold it right back to the Ford house for the most part. It was a really kind of eye-opener being a 19, 20-year-old kid, seeing how somebody was like using and manipulating the system. So, and not to say it's good or bad, but you get to witness how people work and how people operated. So I kind of took note of that man, and he gave his son 3 contracts, and he sold the company. And his son I hated, so he's the reason I quit, and I went and started the company for my grandpa. And things were going pretty good for my grandpa, but that guy's son would call me back all the time to come, hey, could you loan me money for this job? I got this bigger project. And he was always doing bigger projects than I was. And I was always doing hackouts and SSB and kind of smaller things. I was chasing storefront because that's the only bigger stuff I knew back then. And he came to me and wanted some money one time because he got in a bind, and I loaned him the money for 50% buy-in to his business because he had those 3 contracts. So I could go build those relationships and duplicate what his dad did before he was there, because he just wasn't doing the thing. Well, come to find out, we grew the company and things were going pretty well, but he was in tons of debt, and it was eating us alive. And I didn't do my due diligence to know before I got into bed with someone and into business with someone what they had going on. I didn't check their paperwork. I didn't really know too much about this guy, except for he had the clients that I wanted. So I was willing to kind of get into business with this guy and kind of hoping I could turn it into something bigger. And it ended up coming back and biting me in the butt. Luckily, we were pretty smart in the contracts that we had. And as a 23-year-old kid, I went to Spring Glass and I negotiated a contract for $1 million buyout of our three contracts and some smaller, littler contracts that we had picked up. And it was a slow payout, but it was a split. So with all the debt and everything, I ended up getting to walk away with my 500,000, you would assume, with right over 6 figures. And that's all I got to walk away with, but it was still a big chunk of money for a 23-year-old kid, right? And I talk a lot and I talk fast, so if I'm going too fast or I'm losing you guys, you know, just yell at me or raise your hand or something.
You're doing great, man. Keep it up. All ears.
So at that point, I had a sour taste in my mouth about the glass business, so I ran from it. And I wanted to do something different. And I looked around for a little while, still did other things, but I had read a quote, and it was a Warren Buffett quote, and I read it at a Jimmy John's on a wall one time, and it was like, every millionaire has 7 streams of income. And I was obsessed with those 7 streams of income, and I thought I had to have them. And I'm going to kind of tie that point into my simplify things, and that needs to come at levels. You don't try to go do it all at one time. And I see a lot of people make that mistake because we get so excited and opportunities come, and I'm still guilty of it to this day. I get distracted, I'm ADD, and I know that if you guys run businesses and you're on this call, you probably have a lot of same personality traits that I do with that kind of stuff. So hopefully you get some value of learning from my mistakes here. So everything was going pretty good. I had a good amount of money saved up, and I still was running my little Slash Chance Services contracting business that whole time. So it was doing pretty well and producing a pretty good amount of money. And I was getting like referral business from that. But then I got into the cigar lounge, and I got into the cigar tobacco business. And we built a cigar mecca, I guess you could call it. I had 75-inch flat screens on every wall. We had a custom poker table, leather chairs all over the place. They had a retail side and a private members side with private lockers all backed up to it. Had a thumbprint scanned entrance. So you had to scan your thumbprint if you were a member, and you could come in 24/7, get into your lockers. I did a lot of research going out to Bill's neck of the woods and like Tampa Bay and a lot of Florida lounges and stuff out there, and came back and built something really great. And I was going to franchise it. I had it branded really, really well. And by the time I was 24, I had 3 offers on the cigar lounge. It was called the Man Cave Cigar Lounge. I think our website's still up if you want to go check it out. But we were pretty big on Instagram back then. I had like over 10,000 followers, and this is like when Instagram first came out, you know, like 2012, 2013. And I got 3 offers to buy me out, and I was really cocky. I was a young kid, ambitious, like I'm going to turn this into a franchise. I'm going to do something bigger. So I turned 2 down. The third one didn't come for a little while, but there were 7-figure buyouts. Someone wanted, and I didn't even own the building, which is, I'll get to that story later on why that could be important for you too. I leased the building, and I spent well into high 6 figures, close to 7 figures on the build out of the inside of this place. We had over $200,000 air filtration system that matched like Vegas casinos, because I almost got sued by my neighbor who was a hairstylist that our cigar smell was leaking into her shop. So I had to like upgrade my ventilation system and all this kind of stuff. And then the coffee shop at the end went out of business, and my guys, the cigar guys, they would sit there and they would smoke all day long. Like your regulars, they would smoke 8 cigars a day and sit there for 8 hours. So I took over the coffee shop at the end. That was a cafe. So it would serve the cigar lounge members. And then we started another cigar lounge, and another cafe, and I had my production guy would come in and take photos like all of us do for social media, right? Someone's always taking photos. So, and he worked at a coffee shop. So I'm like, why do you work at a coffee shop? You're really talented. He's like, well, I don't know how to get enough business. So then I went into business with him and started a production company, right? And so I'm looking for my 7 things. And then I was flipping houses because I had the tools to do it because I own Last Chance Services. And so at this point, I'm 24 years old. I'm a self-made millionaire. I come from a low income or lower middle class family, self-made, did all that stuff. Things are going really good. I've been with my girlfriend from the time I'm 20. I'm 27. We moved to Northern California. I buy a plot of land out there. I'm going to build the house of my dreams. I'm flying all over the country to all my businesses. And then my wife's pregnant, and then her water breaks 8 weeks early. And we get rushed to the hospital. And then that hospital tells us that my daughter has something called hydrops. So my wife's belly filled up really full, a lot of fluid. So they wanted to transfer us down to San Francisco to the big hospital to kind of take up for her. And at this time, dude, I'm king ding-a-ling, right? Like, I think I'm on top of the world. I got all this stuff going on. If you would ask me when I'm 27 where I would be when I'm 33, it wouldn't be where I'm sitting today talking to you lovely folks, you know? So at that time, they transfer us to a specialty hospital that's going to deliver the baby more safely and has more adequate tools and help and better ICU and all that stuff. So we're thankful, we're hopeful, we're wishing for the best. And the doctor decided that she wasn't going to offer us a C-section, which we didn't realize was a big deal at the time, but come to find out, she tried to deliver the baby, even though my daughter's stomach was way bigger than the head, right? So my daughter's stomach was measuring at almost 40 inches, and you know, a woman only dilates to like 10 or she was measuring to 40 centimeters, and a woman only dilates to 10, right? So this woman tries to deliver the baby and breaks my daughter's neck. And it kind of changed, everything changed like that, right? At that point in time. And I think that's where the reason I'm sharing a little bit of a bigger story tonight, and I hope it's not as glass related. So I just want to kind of get full circle on, there's a lot of things that go on behind closed doors that drive a lot of us. And Bill shared something very close and personal with him last week that kind of inspired me to kind of share this with you guys. So thank you for that, Bill. It was really nice of you to share with everyone. But so my daughter's neck was broken at birth, and they already had the big ICU. There were 17 people in the room when she was born so that they could take care of this hydrops, because the hydrops alone only gave her 12% chance to live, like from that point, and she's 8 weeks premature. So we're scared. It's our first child, you know, we just got married, we're in a new state, our families aren't there. My mom flew in as fast as she could, my sister, everyone tried to fly in as fast as they could, but we're alone, you know, and everything changed really quickly. And the craziest thing that happened was Lily is a 1 of 1. So they tried to get us to let go of her within 5 minutes of her coming. They said she wasn't going to make it. We need to let go, sign these paperwork, right? There's no chance, you know, she's broken. They thought, they didn't realize she broke the neck, but when they went into we followed her down there to the ICU, and then when they went in, to put the tube down her throat so that she could breathe and put the chest tubes in to drain all the fluid, they noticed that her head wasn't connected to her body, that she had a 1-inch gap between her C5 and her C6 vertebrae. They couldn't do any emergency surgeries or anything because she was dumping out so much lymphatic fluid out of her chest tubes that they couldn't roll her over to fuse her spine back together. So she laid like that for 12 weeks, internally decapitated. There's never been another child to live through what she lived through ever in medical history. She's not like a 1%er or anything like that. She's a one of one human being. And what happened on that day and the next year, we lived in 9 hospitals over the next 2 years, and I wasn't able to work. I didn't care about work. I didn't care about getting rich. I didn't care about houses and cars and Louis Vuitton luggage. None of it meant anything to me anymore. I cared about this little thing that I couldn't even hold. I couldn't hold, right? And she can't breathe on her own. She can't pee on her own. She can't roll over on her own. But she can move her neck and she can move her arms. And if any of you guys follow me and any other kind of stuff, you see that we now take her all over the place. And but for those first 6 months, they tried to convince us every day to let her go because she would never go home, right? She would never go home. She would, even if she lived, she would live in a hospice. And I refused to believe that. So I would call rehab doctors around the country 50, 100 times a day. Like I tell these guys to cold call your customers. Stop being scared to pick up the phone. You know, like a lot of people are just scared to pick up the phone when it can really do so much good for you. Well, I called 50, 100 people. I got a hold of this one dude that we did some work for in my production company. And he said, man, I just donated $1 million to Oakland Children's last week. I know the neurosurgeon over there, Dr. Sun, he's been featured on Forbes as top 5 doctors in the world for doing the longest standing surgery at one time. Let me give you his cell phone number. And I'm like, all right. So he gives me this guy's cell phone number, and he done messed up now because he doesn't know me very well. So I go to town on calling Dr. Sun, and finally he calls me back and like, who are you and how did you get my number? And I give him the story about my daughter. And within 2 days, we were transferred to a rehab facility in Oakland from Stanford. And from there, we got to go from one rehab to the other all around the country. But for 2 years, I didn't get to work, so I lost it all. My cigar lounge, went to the people that offered me money. He said, dude, you can see your shelves dwindling. Ever since you haven't been coming back, you're going to go out of business. I'll end up getting this place for the cost of your rent. And I was like, how could you even say that to me right now? Like, you could have been a little less cold. But then I tried to pitch it to a lot of other people, couldn't sell it, sold what I could, material wise and stuff like that. And that exact guy went to my landlord and he got my shop for the cost of my rent. We sold all the kitchen supplies in the cafe. The only thing that really made me any money was the real estate. And I kind of say all that to bring back the circle of like, you have to simplify. You have to know what you're doing and focus on that and only that until you scale it to completion, where you can't scale it anymore. You know, you've kind of maxed out. You know that there's a Coca-Cola and there's a Pepsi in every industry, right? So if you were to look into your market, you're going to know the big glass company in your market and the smaller glass company, and the guy, the runner-up, the guy right next to him. And there's always 2 almost in every single market out there that dominate the industry. So if you're not one of those guys in shower doors, that's where you want to put your focus. You know, you want to put your focus on becoming that guy, because if you try to do everything, it'll never really work out. So going back into how I got back into the glass business, we were 2 years out. We had taken a train from Oakland, and they weren't really giving us the right rehab. And there's only one pediatric spinal cord injury rehab in the country that's all they do. It's called Kennedy Krieger, KKI, and they're in Baltimore, and they're associated with Johns Hopkins. But we had already been dismissed from the hospital and been able to go home at that point because we had gone through this rehab program. And so we figured out a way to get there on train. Because they wouldn't air ambulance us, and we were too scared. My daughter's on a ventilator, oxygen, all this stuff. So we take a train across country. We get a diaphragmatic pacemaker made at Cleveland hospitals in Ohio. And then we take the rest of the route to Baltimore, and we do the rest of our little rehab stint in Baltimore. Well, by this time I ran out of money. It's about almost 2 years into this hospital living, ICU, popping, just, you know, best quality of life for my daughter. And my parents worked for me. So I started the cigar lounge so my dad, who was a cop, could retire. And so I started this for him because it was his dream to like sit around and smoke cigars all day and get paid for it. So I started this business to help my dad out. And then my mom was just a secretary, and eventually we were doing well enough where we let mom come on. So now mom works at the cigar lounge. Well, when the cigar lounge started tanking, because I wasn't involved and I didn't have systems and structure, I didn't have anyone to call, you know? There wasn't like the parents to hit up and like, hey, can you help me out? I'm in a bind. Well, so I had about $600 to my name, and we still lived in Northern California, and we're in Baltimore. So I get a plane ticket and I fly back to Baltimore, and I sell everything in our house, and I pack up what I can in a 6x12 U-Haul trailer, and I drive it down to Texas. And with what I sold, I had enough gas money to get me back to Texas, and I move in with my baby sister. And this is 2017. I move in with my kid sister, 3 years younger than me. She has 2 extra bedrooms, so she's going to let my daughter live in one and me and my wife live in the other. And so this is like, talk about swallowing your pride here, right? When I used to just, I think I paid for the floors for a wedding present in that house, you know, when they moved in, like those kind of things. Like I was more the bigger helper, big brother, and here I am having to move in with her. And I got $300 up to my name by the time I made it to her house and get situated. And my family is still in Baltimore. So I used that last $300 to get a ticket to fly me back to Baltimore. And at this point, I really don't even have money for food. I'm a new father. I got a wife. I'm supposed to be a provider. 2 years prior to this, I thought I was building a dynasty, a legacy. And I don't know who to call. And my uncle and I have always been really close. He's a single man. He has no kids. And I called him up and kind of told him my situation. He wired me $2,000 that day. Boom. Sorry, I get a little choked up. But he wired me $2,000, and he's the one that owns Ames Mirror and Glass. And we got a train ticket, and we ended up making it down here during Hurricane Harvey. And so the tracks were overflowed in Fort Worth, so we couldn't even make it all the way down to Austin. So he got in the truck and took off and picked us up in his truck with my kid on a ventilator, and we're trying to figure out how to situate her in a car seat, and like her stroller wheelchair has to go in the bed of the truck. It was just the whole wild situation. But we ended up moving back here, and I didn't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. I gave up without those dreams and ambitions. But now that we were down in Texas and we had help from friends and family, and we were able to get nursing, I was able to go back to work. And I wanted to go do sales because I have a natural knack for sales and marketing. It's something that I really like. So I was going to go do sales for Engel and Volkers and sell private jets and private yachts. And I had already got the job, passed the interview process, and like think of the commissions on people on private jets and private yachts. Like it would have been a pretty sweet gig probably. But my uncle invited me to lunch, or I invited my uncle to lunch to say thank you. And I went to say thank you, and he offered me the job to come work for him at Ames Mirror and Glass and do some sales and help him grow things. And I'm like, yeah, right, dude, you wish. I'm out of here. I got out of that business a long time ago. And he's like, yeah, I don't blame you, but come back to work for me. Come on, man. I told him I'd go check it out. So I went and visited for a couple weeks and kind of saw that there was a knack in the market. And people were really missing out on like technology. And when I walked in his doors, it was just like it was 20 years ago when I worked there, you know, or however long it's been, you know, it was just like 15 years ago when me and Rob worked there together. And so I just saw that there was a bigger need. So I did a little bit more research and saw that there was more that could be done, like communities like this, like softwares that, technologies, automations and things like that he was in the apartment industry, so he did mainly like all the apartments in town. So I knew I needed to simplify, right, in order to scale, like to figure out what was our thing. And he really sold to all the apartments in the 90s. If you were at an apartment in the Austin, Texas, Central Texas area, you used Angel and Glass. Same in the early 2000s. And a bigger company came around called Ameristar, and that's all they did was apartment glass. You could ask them to do a shower for the manager of that apartment, and they'd say, no, we do apartment glass, like that's it, right? And it was their niche, and they have, I think, like 14 locations, and they do pretty good. So I was like, you want me to go up against them? Is that what you want? He was like, no, I don't think we want to do that. We need to do something new. The apartments, there's no money in the apartments. They don't spend anything. They want it for the cheapest, and they'll throw you to the side for a guy that'll do it for a quarter less. So at that point, he was doing, since 95, probably about $1 million a year, you know, just average, running that steady little wave, lived a comfortable life, good life for himself, couple trucks running. But there was no room for me in a company like that. So like if I'm going to come in, we have to be willing to grow. So he gave me complete control of the company and right to grow it. And then at now he's halfway retired. He doesn't really come in. But from that point, I threw a bunch of shit at the wall to see what would stick. I wanted to know, we got into windows and doors. I got into trying to compete against the window and door companies and only replace the glass, because I noticed when we were ripping out the windows and doors that a lot of the frames were still good. It was just the failed IGs. So then we were trying to do whole houses of IGs. I love the commercial stuff because I know storefronts, so I really went after chasing storefront jobs. I sold Hensel Phelps, which is they do $4 billion a year. I sold them within being there for 6 weeks, was one of my first jobs to sell, and it was a 7-figure job. So I got my uncle's company from a $1 million company to a $5 million run rate in 1 year's time. And it was pretty quick. It was pretty easy. I really got into business development. If you guys are in commercial, I'll drop a good little, the SPMS group, Society of Professional Marketing Services. It is all business development and marketing for nothing but the highest of the high contractors out there, the DPRs, Harvey Cleary's, the big players out there, Kiewit, stuff, Hensel Phelps. So it's a really good one, group to get in. They meet a lot. You get to network a lot. So I got into that group, and that's how I ended up getting that job really quickly, and grew the company. What I noticed was when we started getting all these big jobs and I'm trying to do all this stuff, was we needed different tools. We needed, my guys that have been working at apartments for the past few decades weren't really good at doing shower doors. And some of them were pretty good at storefronts, but they weren't efficient. And so by doing all this stuff, I felt like when I asked my uncle what we should do or what we do, he said anything but eye, auto, and drinking glasses. And so and I was like, all right, well, that narrows it down, you know? And then I was like, anything too big? And he was like, keep it under 3 stories. All right. And then, so those were my parameters, you know? So I really didn't know where the real profit was. And for me, if I'm going to get into a business and I'm going to really go all in on something, I want to know where the profit is. And that's where my relationship with Brandon really met. I was big on Instagram, and so always like sharing my stories on Instagram, and Brandon and I met, and we would talk all the time. He was like my mentor for shower doors. And that's why I think like by Bill, Chris, Billy, Brandon, everyone that shares on here, people have no idea how cool that is to be able to just hit someone up, like, hey, I was doing this way. What would you do in this situation? Or I have a customer that wants this. What would you do? And I think a lot of people are just scared to ask. It really comes down to like people let their egos come before like collaboration. So they're going to put their ego in, and that's going to stunt your growth every time, you know? Me, I'll ask anyone anything. So like I have no, even if I know how to do it, I might just want to know how you do it, just to see if you do it different. Maybe I could learn a thing or two. So from there, Brandon and I built a really good relationship, and I was going to him all the time. And I was really trying to simplify what were we going to do. We went heavy into commercial. We were making a lot of money in commercial, but you needed a lot of middle management in commercial, and middle management is expensive to get good middle managers. And then the more you kind of build up, you're needing foremans, not only like job foremans, but then job project managers and superintendents and full-time estimators, and just things that you don't really need in the beginning stages of the shower door business, you know? And so, but it didn't cash flow. It didn't cash flow enough for me. You're always waiting on your money with commercial. I could talk myself into getting deposits, which I recommend everyone doing. Always like stating in your estimate that you want a 50% materials deposit, because I think a lot of people are scared to ask that in the commercial game. And a lot of bigger players will give you that, like a large chunk deposit right from the get-go, and then work you on draws on the rest. But so I needed something that would cash flow. A good family friend, my uncle and his partner owned a place called Austin Glass Wholesalers. Taylor's on here. It was Taylor's daddy that was partners with my uncle. But they owned Austin Glass Wholesalers, and they noticed they made IGs, sold mirror, SSB, all that kind of stuff. Didn't temper, but we're just like a good IG wholesaler, you know, kind of local shop. I think every town has one. In Austin, they filled the void in Austin. Well, they noticed no one would buy from them back then because they also owned Ames, Mirror, and Glass. So they split ways and kind of separated the businesses. And then once Taylor's daddy passed away, they sold, a family friend took over. So I had someone in the business that made IGs, so I could get IGs fast. So I called Scott and I put together a marketing campaign because I knew people in windows and doors were waiting 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get their retrofits in, right? And so I'm like, I'm gonna get glass in 2 days. I'm gonna measure, and in 2 days, I'm gonna have the glass will be installed within 72 hours. So Rob and I built a campaign on Facebook, and it crushed it. I mean, we could spend $200 and we could make $6,000 off that $200 daily. And it was just booming, it was popping. And so we were cash flowing because we're getting 50% down, and my margins on windows were crazy. So this is when Brandon and my relationship really got good, because he runs a custom shower door company, very singular from day one. That's what he was building, right? And he built an awesome business. But me being the question asker, argumentative person that I am, I'm like, windows, there's more margins, bro. There's more margins. Like, you can tell me whatever you want, but I'm getting 5X on my windows. You're barely doubling up. I'm getting more in labor. I'm making more money, right? And so we would go back and forth all the time. And you can see who won the argument because where I'm at this current moment in time. Brandon won because windows was unpredictable. Because you could get into a ply gem window and it would be done with hot melt glue, and it would take you an hour and a half to hack out that window. And then you have 39 more of them because you sold 40 of them in that house. And you had a day's worth of labor for 4 guys, and now you're in there just cracking and breaking glass all over people's stuff, and there's nothing you could do about it, right? So it really, it kind of changed the way I thought about things. Well, then my daughter had a heat stroke in Austin, and we weren't really getting good therapy, so I had to leave. And there's only 4 therapies in the whole country I could go to in all of Austin: Denver, Philadelphia, Baltimore, or Chicago. So we chose Denver. I could say obviously, but you know, you guys could feel differently. But we chose Denver out of the 4 because we thought it was the best place to live. But now it sucks. I just started over my life at 30 years old. I've been building, I told myself I'm going to focus only on glass for the rest of my life. I'm going to do nothing else. I'm going to solely focus. I already tried to mix and mingle, and you know, it didn't work out for me. So I wanted to focus solely on glass. And now I have to leave Austin because my kid again. So then that's where me and Brandon's relationship really blossomed. I said, hey man, I'm moving to Denver. I don't know if we could work something out or not, but I know you got a little operation, and he had a one-man operation out here that he had a partner with that he used to do. They were paramedics together, and they actually did glass like when they were like 18 years old together in San Diego. And so it was just Tom out here. And what I brought to the picture was more like sales and marketing, and Brandon already had the systems in place, right? And the way that business ran. And by us getting together, we were able to grow this company by almost 4x in the first year that we got here. And now we're looking to double that this year. And then from that, we were like, man, we should teach other people how to do this. It'd be really cool. Like if we could help other people, we see so many people struggling like my uncle were, if we could come together and build. And that's where Glass Experts Partners kind of came to play, was we wanted to help other people. We wanted to kind of give it all away. And then we developed some software, and we white labeled some software that we brought to the market. So we would try to like help other people a little bit more. But it didn't really click with a lot of people. So then we kind of got to the point where we're like, well, we need like some credibility in the marketplace. And we need to educate people another way to kind of lure them in and tell them who we are. So then we wrote this book. It's called Glass Expert Secrets. And it kind of gives the whole game, everything we do and how we do it and why we do it. And we've really got to the point where this will be out on Amazon, I think in August. It should be ready and live on Amazon. You can get a copy over there. But I think it'll really
want an autographed copy, man.
Yeah, dude. No, there's
come on now. Throw me a bone here.
Chris, you got a copy, man. Now, so we even hit up Chris because Chris had the biggest Facebook group out there. And we were like, how can we do something? How, instead of trying to compete with Chris, we asked how we could collaborate. And that's kind of where even these Wednesday night calls came from. We wanted to meet on Wednesday nights to like educate people. So I say all that long-winded stuff, and I tried to crank it in as short as I could to say that if you focus on one thing and you really, really focus on we're in business here, so I'm going to talk money for a little second, okay? And I know money is a sensitive subject to a lot of people, but which is weird to me because we're in business. Why else did you get in it? When it comes to money, it's like profit is what matters, right? Not revenue. And so Brandon and I are like very, very big on like trying to dial in and really ramp up our margins. And the way that we're able to do that, and the more we notice that we're able to do that, is the more simple we make the business. So even, and I'm going to speak on Brandon a little bit, but even though Brandon gets to do a ton of really big custom stuff, he stays in that heavy glass interior niche, you know, really tough, but mainly just railings, wine cellars, mirrors, and showers, right? That's it. We talk about sometimes those big railings, even though the check looks so beautiful and it adds so much to the bank account, are you really making as much money than you were just running your shower door crews day in, day out with the same crews doing the same stuff? And you're not. It looks great on Instagram and stuff, you know, and even the commercial, but like when you get into those bigger railing projects, 6-figure plus railing projects, and they're taking a while and you need, you know, project managers and foremans and stuff like that. So the more that we really analyze the business and the more that we talk to you guys, and even listening to Bill last week, it's like Bill knew what he was getting into too, you know, like to build what Bill's built. It's all about like simplifying and becoming the best and the go-to in your industry for that thing. And you can build that thing to a big thing. There's some, you know, probably heavy 8-figure companies out there that only install shower doors for the most part, you know? And so like, if you guys want to really build something, I wouldn't focus so much on trying to do everything, you know? In the beginning, you feel like you have to because you got to pay the bills. So maybe that hack out can be worth it. But just remember this one thing. Every time you say yes to something that you don't want to do, you're having to say no to something else that you probably wanted to do. it almost happens every time because you're either missing that phone call, you're missing that email, you're saying yes, you're stuck out in the field doing these other things, when really if you just would have said no, and maybe you didn't have a customer at that point in time, but you went and did some guerrilla marketing like Bill was talking about last week, or like Billy's been talking about, just the go out and use that time, your downtime, to execute and find more customers to sell them the product that you do want to install, the business that you're actually trying to install, you know? So that's my rounded way. Hope I didn't bore anybody, but I'll leave it open for discussion now.
Well, you said you moved to Northern California. Where was that at?
Do what?
You moved to Northern California. Where did you move to?
Oh, I had 2 properties. We're like, but I really was in like Petaluma area.
Petaluma, okay.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about, you know, doing commercial work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here in California, you can't get deposits for commercial work.
I've had like every contractor, all like even like the big ones, like Hensel Phelps told me that no way. DPR told me no way.
And then we used to do a lot of commercial work up to about 1980, and it dried up. So every billing cycle, they kept 10% of your bill.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the project, so let's say the flooring tiles popped up, you didn't get your money, you didn't get your attention until everything was cleared up. So that's the way it works in California.
Yeah, they still, in Texas, they still do a 10% hold at the final end of the project.
I mean, we did a wastewater treatment plant where they built the substations all the way out to the treatment plant. That took like 5 years to do. We did the treatment plant, and at the end of the project, they fired up the computers, and the motors were spiking the computers at the treatment plant. So they have retention in everybody that worked on the treatment plant. You know? Yeah. So we got out of that. So now I just get a check on everything.
Yeah. And that's even on so even simplifying down the shower door business even more, who is your avatar in the shower door business, right? Like a lot of guys that I talk to, like Steve, he just has his couple contractors and they pay him well, and he goes after his contractors and he knows he's going to get his money, and he's a firefighter, so he's not really worried about like, you know, a whole bunch of new business. I hated contractor work because Brandon gets tons of contractor work, but it's the same as commercial. You're always waiting on your money a little bit. I like homeowners because 50 down, 50 when I leave, right? Like, I mean,
in California, you're only allowed 10% down. So
yeah, I figured out how to work around that.
I do too. It's called a down payment.
Yeah, I don't take a deposit. I take a down payment, and that payment is for work that I've already done. I figure that showing up and taking measurements is worth about 50% of the job.
Right, so I do the same
materials.
I've done about half the work by the time I just show up there.
You know, like I did a house in Carmel. It's over $200,000 worth of work. No contract, and I needed money to buy from Pulp Studios. He wrote me a check for $30,000. You know, and I bought the glass. You know,
So does anybody else have a question for Chance? This guy's a smart guy, man. He knows a lot of stuff.
Chance.
Been through a lot.
Chance, you said you were talking about the real estate and owning you were leasing and then you owned.
Yeah, I was flipping properties back then, but my first couple I got sentimental feelings for. So I held on to them and tried to lease them. And it ended up being all right, but I had horrible tenants. I lived in another state, so managing them was difficult at that time. So I would do it again, but I would make sure I did it local, even if I hired another property management company to run them these days. But I tried to have friends kind of doing that kind of stuff for me. And I was really trying to get into land deals. There was a little town, Logan on the call, he's my salesman down there. A little town where he lived right before, it was called Jonestown. And Austin, if you know it, is growing like insane, man. It's just, Austin is a small town that turned to a big city. So Jonestown's right on Lake Travis before you get out to Lago Vista, which is a really nice part of town. And there's just this really small town that no one was doing nothing with. And everyone said it was like a crack haven, but it was on the water. So I was going over there and I was buying up every property I could buy, from $8,000 lots to $50,000 lots. And I was buying them up left and right. And I wanted to become the mayor of Jonestown, and do the development there and kind of like change the stigma of the city. Like I said, I had some big ambitions back then. I don't think they went away. I try to like zone them in nowadays to just the glass business.
So how's your daughter doing now? Or how old is she?
My daughter is 5 years old. She'll be 6 next March. She can move her right arm. She can move her neck. She talks on a screen that's called a Microsoft Toby, and so it's an eye gazer, and it reads her eyeballs. And my wife has it programmed with like all of her favorite TV shows, her favorite songs, and so she can scan and sing along. She can has pictures of all of us, so she can say hello, Daddy. When therapy comes to the house, my family's from Texas, Southern Texas, and kind of has a little twang to them. So my grandma always say like, "Go on, get on out of here." And so she put on "Go on, get" on my daughter's Toby, but it talks like a little electronic. So the therapist would be like, "Hey, Lily, how are you doing? Go away." And she'll be like, "Oh, Lily, don't say that." And Lily will say, "Go on, get."
That sounds great.
So just, yeah, she's a great kid, man.
So
Can't ride bikes.
I had a niece that was born with her intestines on the outside, so what she was saying. And she's now 40 years old, doing just great. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always good to hear the good come out stories. So, yeah, she's a hoot, man. We have a lot of fun. We took her to Ouray, Colorado this past weekend. So I can't take her to ride bikes and stuff like that. And you know, just to end on that note, just on a perspective kind of note. When you get up in the morning, you stretch a little bit, right? You take a big stretch and you usually stretch your chest back and you yawn and you get up and you brush your teeth and you take a piss. And you do all those things. And when you're sleeping at night, you roll over. If you're uncomfortable, you roll over to the other side. Well, my kid, she can't do any of that. None of it. Not one thing, right? And she smiles bigger and more often than anyone you've ever met in your entire life, right?
That's great.
So no matter how life gets you or what life gets you down, and what you're battling with, you know, and like I know every single person here has that story, like I do and like Bill does, but use that stuff to fuel you, you know, and like have a different perspective, you know. That's a beautiful little girl in there that can't go run with her little sister. She can't piss on her own, you know. My wife, we don't even have night nursing, so my wife and I get up every 2 hours and we rotate sides, and drain her tube every 2 hours, and we don't have weekend nursing. So like we do all this stuff constant, 24/7. It doesn't stop, and I still do all the things that I do. So like, don't ever say you don't have enough time. It's like you're not making the time to do what you want to do. You know, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, whether it's Warren Buffett, Bill Dobbin, Taylor Mitchell, it doesn't matter. All the hours, they're the same. We clock in, we clock out. What you do with those hours, man, that's up to you. So I get up every day and I'm positive and happy. I go to life with a different perspective than most, because I get to wake up at 4:30 in the morning every day, and I get to roll my daughter, and I get to see her smile back at me, and she uses that one arm to give me a knuckle sandwich. And from that point on, like that's all the motivation I need. I know that not one of you is going to outwork me ever. And you might feel different than that, but that's how I go through my life. That's the mentality that I have, is I'm never going to lose because I got outworked ever. That's not going to be the reason I lost. I'll tell you that much. And since I've been doing this stuff with Brandon, I don't think we're going to be losing anytime soon. We got some really, really cool stuff going on. And yeah, I'm super stoked, man. I'm happy to be on this group and learn from all you guys. I can't wait to see who's going to share their little saga.
Yeah, Chance, man, I want to I want to thank you for sharing that story, man. It's inspiration. And you know, since we're telling truth and honesty, and you know, coming from where we really come from, and um, you know, 20 months ago, I just got done doing a 6-year prison sentence, and got out of prison with $40 and a cell phone. And you know, I thought I wasn't ever gonna have anything. My dad owned Ames Mirror and Glass with Uncle Troy. I didn't have a job to go back to. Moved to Corpus Christi, man, and worked 2 jobs, man, and saved up enough money to where I could finally start opening up my own company. I remember I got my shirts and my cards in there from before I even had a DBA or an LLC, where I was passing out cards, wearing my own shirts, doing side jobs with a dream of like, hey, one day I'm gonna make it. You know, I'm not going back to the lifestyle that I had. And you know, just sitting here hearing you say everything that you're saying, you know, it inspires me to want to talk, you know, and want to tell people my story, because not too many people thought I was going to make it. And, you know, I just, you know, the thing is I believed in myself, and that was enough for me. And I pushed every day, and I spent, you know, how much I'm about to spend on inventory with a big contract that I just got, you know. And in 2 weeks on a Friday, I'm gonna be picking up the biggest check that I've ever picked up in my life for the rest of my life, every 2 weeks. And man, if my daddy was here, he'd be so proud of me. And you know, you've guided me with these showers, man, and these mirrors. And like you said, I was one of those people who were trying to do everything: auto, residential, commercial. And I closed it all down and just started doing showers, and um, signed with the biggest home builders in Texas, you know, yesterday. And doing an extra 25 showers a week, and with 5 times 10, 30 extra mirrors a week. You know, it's just crazy to hear those stories, man, and where we've came from and how far we've come. And it ain't from, you know how you said, nobody's gonna outwork me. And I swear to God, I ain't gonna fail from lack of trying. You hear me? And so it's good for you to tell that story, man. And maybe I'll start sharing mine a little bit more, because you know, there's a lot of people in my situation that think like, hey man, you know, I'm a felon, or hey man, you know, I don't got much, or hey, I got $40 in a cell phone, am I ever gonna make it? Well, 20 months later, I own a company, I got 5 trucks, I have 2 houses, I take care of my sister, I just got engaged. Man, dude, I got more things going for me now than I ever have in my life. Or even honestly thinking about my dad, I think that I'm outgrowing what my daddy did. You know what I mean? And so he would be real proud, you know, that angel on my shoulder being like, man, dude, you did it. And I didn't take any handouts. I didn't take any help. Shit, I wouldn't even let my sister buy me a pair of shoes whenever I got out, because I told her that I didn't want any handouts. I wanted to work for everything that I had. So I washed cars until I could get a job, so that I could go and buy myself some tennis shoes and some shorts and some nice clothes to go and get a job at a glass company locally, you know. And um, where I from where I was at 20 months ago, man, walking out of them gates to I'm sitting in a $90,000 truck right now, dude. It's crazy, you know. It's God given, man. God's good, you know. Just like with your daughter, you know, I believe in the Lord. I don't know if everybody else
Amen.
does. You know?
Yes, brother. Preach it. Come on now.
No, but those are true blessings, you know. And your daughter's an angel, man. And my daddy, he's my angel. And the same way that she pushes you, man. You know, I hear my daddy all the time in the back of my head, boy, you better go get it. Hey, you're not up at the shop. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
right.
I just want to thank you for sharing that, man, because, you know, I'm going to start sharing my story, and maybe I can get somebody that is where I was at, or, you know, maybe even worse, to realize that, hey, a dream becomes a reality with putting it into effect, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to get in touch with you, Taylor, and have you host one of these, because
Oh,
I'd like to hear more of your story for sure, man.
Okay.
Dude,
That'd be cool,
congratulations,
man.
brother. Congratulations, Taylor. That is, dude, I'm tearing up over here, man. That is so fucking cool, man. That is awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Also,
man.
man,
And
so perfect.
man, Brandon and Robert Gomez and Chance, man, they have helped me so much. Man, dude, I have failed a few times and had questions that I didn't know. I got a business partner who's in Cabo a lot. He's out of town a lot. And so I've had to learn to finance this whole company by myself. And you know, I just kept kicking and kept kicking, man, and I wouldn't give up. And you know, between them three, and I've known Chance and Robert since I was
Now
probably
you gotta-
10
you
years
gotta-
old, you
You
know?
gotta save some of that. He's gonna let
Yeah,
you
yeah, save some of that. Yeah,
like a bottle that shit up.
yeah,
and bring
that's
back
it,
to the
man.
table.
Because it's like it's almost dinner time now, and you know how my
Hey,
son
hey, well,
gets
y'all,
grown,
hey, well,
yeah.
y'all go eat most definitely, because hey, I'm hungry too. I want me some water.
Good, man. I can tell
I'm
you
hungry,
sound
too.
hungry. That's good.
Yeah, I just got home, man, and I was in the backyard, but the mosquitoes were eating me up. So I was like, man, I'm gonna go and get back in the truck. Yeah. But hey, Chance, thanks for sharing that, man. I really do appreciate it, man. For real.
Yeah, you
It-
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
Chance.
yeah, Rob posted in the chat, you know, he's asking when that book is coming out.
Yeah,
Be
I'm
sure
going to-
be sure to let us know, really, man, when that becomes available. And we'll do another one of these. Maybe we'll have you and Chance on at the same time. We can talk a little bit about the book and kind of pitch the book a little bit.
Yeah, I think because
That'd be
Brandon
fun.
like jumped in. He just talked about handrails. Everyone else is kind of like told their story as they went along. So Brandon's got a really great story. It'd be cool to let him come through and
Yeah, absolutely.
retell his.
You know, and it's interesting because like my blog post this month on the Glass Magazine website is all about specializing, you know. So it's like it's funny, man, we're kind of on that same, you know, wavelength. And yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in just finding a niche, you know. And
I mean,
and,
even look for you. I mean, you are the shower door man, you know, where you're at. And you're a one-man operation. You run a successful company in a very expensive place to live, you know. So it doesn't mean you have to grow big and own tempering facilities and multiple locations and all that. You can, you know, some guys just want to work for themselves, do quality work. But that same mindset of the specialty, I'm sticking to what I want to do. And that simplicity of that is what gives you peace of mind, right? Helps you sleep at night.
exactly.
Take away the
Exactly. And if you're somebody who like Chance and I have that in common, that we have like a lot of irons in the fire. So, I mean, if you want to do a variety of different things, it really does help to really specialize in an area, and that kind of frees up some time for you to, you know, pursue other more artistic interests or whatever, you know, because yeah, you do need multiple streams of income. But we'll talk about that more next time.
Thanks so much. I'm really inspired by your story. I just want to say I will never give up. That's what I just get in that I will never give up. That's just what the story is all about. Never give up.
Yeah,
There's always hope. There's always hope.
there's always hope. You keep it up,
Yeah.
Chance.
That's right,
Yes,
man.
boss.
That's
Yes,
right.
boss. Yes, boss.
All right, you guys,
Thanks
keep
for
up the
letting me
good
host
work.
this.
We'll see you
Appreciate
next time.
Yeah.